Steam is literally packed with horror games that can wreck your nerves, and these 25 are the ones that hit different. Starting with number 1, R.E.P.O is the horror co-op game that completely took over 2025 and refuses to let go. This indie gem puts you and up to 5 friends in a ghost hunting scenario that sounds manageable until it absolutely is not. The physics-based gameplay means every object in the environment can become part of the chaos, and the enemy AI is unpredictable in the worst way possible. What makes it terrifying is how the tension builds between laughing with your squad and then suddenly screaming for your life. The sound design is genuinely disturbing, and the creatures you encounter get progressively more unhinged as you advance. It blends comedy and pure dread in a way few games manage to pull off. Number 2 is Look Outside. And if you sleep on this one, you are making a serious mistake. This turn-based horror RPG wraps survival mechanics inside a pixel art world that looks deceptively simple until the game starts showing you things that do not make sense. You wake up to find the outside world has turned everyone into grotesque meat creatures, so you barricade yourself indoors and try to last 2 weeks. The choices you make define your run entirely. And the writing is razor sharp, with dark humor cutting through the dread at the right moments. The monster designs are nightmare fuel, and the soundtrack hits in all the right disturbing ways. Coming in at number 3, the Silent Hill 2 remake took one of the most psychologically devastating horror games ever made and rebuilt it for a new generation. Bloober Team managed to preserve what made the original so deeply unsettleful while layering in tighter controls and updated visuals that make the fog-drenched streets feel more suffocating than ever. The sound design is the real weapon here, filling corridors with audio cues that keep you paranoid, even in moments where nothing is happening. Pyramid Head remains one of gaming's most iconic monsters, and his appearances hit harder than ever. Number 4 is Silent Hill F, a brand new chapter in the franchise set in 1960s rural Japan, and it is exactly the kind of fresh take the series needed. The setting leans into Japanese folklore and body horror with a visual language unlike anything else in the franchise. The protagonist navigates a world overtaken by grotesque floral mutations, and the atmosphere is relentlessly oppressive. Bloober Team and Konami delivered a story that stands completely on its own while feeling unmistakably like Silent Hill in the best possible way. Sliding into number 5, Amnesia The Bunker drops you into a World War I underground bunker where a creature hunts you through the dark without mercy or pattern. Unlike other horror games, there are no safe rooms and no scripted scares waiting for you around corners. The monster's behavior is dynamic, meaning it reacts to sound and movement in real time, so every footstep and every decision carries real weight. The game gives you limited resources and forces you to think creatively just to survive each encounter, which makes even small victories feel genuinely rewarding. At number 6, Lethal Company proves that co-op does not have to kill the horror. Up to 4 players scavenge abandoned moons to hit a revenue quota for a faceless corporation, and the maps are filled with creatures that range from unsettling to absolutely lethal. The proximity voice chat means your teammates can hear you scream in real time, and the game is full of moments where poor communication gets everyone killed in hilariously terrible ways. The randomized maps and enemy spawns keep every run fresh, and the lo-fi aesthetic adds a layer of dread that polished AAA games rarely achieve. Number 7 is Sons of the Forest, the follow-up to The Forest that throws you onto a remote island crawling with mutant cannibals, and something far worse lurking deeper in the dark. The survival mechanics are demanding but rewarding, and the world feels genuinely hostile from the moment you arrive. Building a shelter feels meaningful because the threats outside are real and persistent. The late-game reveals push the story into territory that is unsettling on a level that goes beyond just creatures trying to eat you, and the underground environments are some of the most claustrophobic in any horror game. Coming in at number 8, the Outlast Trials takes the brutality of the Outlast series and throws it into a co-op framework that somehow makes everything more intense. Set in the Cold War era, players are subjected to twisted psychological experiments by a shady corporation. The level design is labyrinthine, and the enemies are relentless, giving you very few moments to breathe. Playing with friends does not reduce the fear, because the missions are designed to split the group and isolate players at the worst possible moments, making communication and trust essential to survival. Number 9 goes to Visage, a first-person psychological horror game heavily inspired by the canceled PT demo that haunts gamers to this day. Set inside a suburban house with a violent history, the game unfolds across multiple storylines that peel back layers of tragedy and supernatural horror. The puzzles are cryptic and the atmosphere is dense, making every hallway feel loaded with potential danger. Unlike most horror games, Visage does not rely on cheap jump scares. Instead, it builds a sustained dread that gets under your skin and stays there long after you stop playing. At number 10, Slay the Princess the Pristine cut puts you in a cabin with one instruction: kill the princess in the basement before she ends the world. What follows is one of the most mind-bending narrative horror experiences on Steam, constantly subverting your expectations and rewriting the rules of the game itself. Every choice reshapes the story in meaningful ways, and the voice acting elevates the already outstanding writing. The black and white art style adds to the unsettling fairy tale tone, and the game earns its horror credentials through psychological tension rather than traditional scares. Number 11, No, I'm Not a Human is the indie horror game that blindsided everyone. You are trapped at home as the world ends outside, and visitors keep showing up at your door. Your job is to figure out who is actually human and who is not, using only the clues provided. The tension comes from uncertainty and the cost of being wrong, making each knock on the door a small moment of genuine dread. The low-key presentation makes the horror feel grounded and believable, which is far more effective than anything flashy could ever be. Stepping into number 12, OMORI lures you in with its soft pastel art style and then dismantles you emotionally from the inside out. This RPG follows a hikikomori and his friends, navigating both a dream world and the painful truth of the real one. The horror creeps in gradually before hitting you with revelations that reframe everything you have experienced. The psychological themes are handled with uncommon maturity, and the combat system ties directly into the emotional core of the story in ways that feel genuinely clever. Number 13 belongs to Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, the visual novel that famously uses the genre's own tropes as a weapon against the player. What starts as a cheerful high school literature club story begins unraveling in ways that are genuinely disturbing. The game breaks its own fourth wall repeatedly and uses meta-horror techniques that feel fresh even years after its original release. The Plus version adds side stories that flesh out the characters, making the horror of the main route hit even harder. At number 14, Little Nightmares 2 stands as one of the most visually striking horror platformers ever made. You navigate a distorted world filled with grotesque figures that feel designed specifically to trigger deep-seated unease. The school chapter in particular is a masterclass in sustained dread, with the teacher's elastic neck becoming one of the most memorable enemy designs in recent horror gaming. The environmental storytelling builds a lore that is as dark as it is fascinating, rewarding observant players with details that deepen the world considerably. Number 15 goes to Resident Evil Village, Capcom's 8th mainline entry that balances action and atmospheric horror in ways that consistently impress. The opening hours in the castle are among the tensest in the entire franchise, blending gothic aesthetics with survival horror pacing that forces you to carefully manage resources. Lady Dimitrescu became a cultural phenomenon for good reason, but it is the later portions of the game that deliver the most genuinely unsettling horror content, particularly the Beneviento House section, which is practically a masterpiece of pure dread. Coming in at 16, Alien Isolation remains the gold standard for single enemy horror on PC. You are trapped on a space station with one xenomorph, and the creature's AI is sophisticated enough that it genuinely learns and adapts to your behavior over time. The 1970s retro-futurist aesthetic is meticulously crafted and makes every corridor feel authentically dangerous. The tension never fully releases because you are never fully safe, and the game's length means you have to live with that pressure for a genuinely substantial amount of time. At number 17, Phasmophobia turned ghost hunting into one of the most replayable horror experiences on Steam. You and your team enter haunted locations with equipment designed to identify which type of ghost is present, but the ghosts have their own agenda and their own capacity to hunt you down. The game is constantly updated with new content, new ghost types, and new mechanics that keep the experience feeling fresh. Playing in VR elevates the horror to another level entirely, and the community around the game adds a social dimension that extends its longevity considerably. Number 18 is Faith, the Unholy Trinity, a horror game that uses an intentionally retro 8-bit aesthetic to deliver some of the most disturbing imagery in the genre. Set during the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, you play as a priest confronting genuine demonic evil with only a crucifix and your faith. The lo-fi visuals work in the game's favor, letting your imagination fill in the gaps in ways that high-fidelity graphics simply cannot replicate. The EVP sequences using speech synthesis are particularly unsettling and have become iconic within indie horror circles. Stepping into number 19, Signalis is a survival horror game that draws heavily from classic PS1-era titles while building something entirely its own. You play as a replica android searching for her lost partner in a nightmare world of Cold War imagery and Lovecraftian dread. The inventory management is intentionally limited, forcing careful decisions about what to carry. The narrative is told through fragmented documents and environmental details, building a story that rewards players willing to piece it together, and the ending sequences are genuinely haunting. Number 20 is Cry of Fear, a free-to-play psychological horror shooter that began as a Half-Life mod and grew into something remarkable. The game follows Simon through dark streets and disturbing hallways as he confronts his own mental deterioration. The environments shift between the real world and a nightmare reflection of it, and the creature designs are deeply unsettling. For a game that costs nothing, the quality of the horror experience it delivers is exceptional, and it remains one of the most effective psychological horror games on the platform. At number 21, Incident at Grove Lake is a short but devastatingly effective horror experience from solo developer Dan McGrath. Set on a lakeside property with limited resources and carefully timed procedural scares, the game uses restraint to maximum effect. Nothing is telegraphed and nothing is over-explained, leaving you to experience the horror on its own terms. McGrath's approach to building tension through sound and environment, rather than cheap tricks, makes this one of the most respected short horror titles on Steam. Number 22 is By Sweet Carole, a hand-drawn animated horror adventure that looks like a classic fairy tale and then immediately turns that premise against you. You play as Lana Benton, investigating the disappearance of a girl named Carole in a woodland setting where nothing is what it appears. The animation style is genuinely beautiful, which makes the dark turns in the narrative hit with extra force. The storytelling is layered, and the horror escalates naturally, making it one of the most narratively satisfying indie horror titles of its release year. Heading to number 23, Sorry We're Closed is a lo-fi horror RPG dripping with punk attitude and deeply strange demon lore. You play as Michelle, a heartbroken young woman targeted by an archdemon known as the Duchess, and the story blends club culture with genuine supernatural horror. The shifting perspectives and original soundtrack give it a distinct identity that sets it apart from virtually everything else in the genre. The tone balances dark humor with sincere emotional stakes, and the creature designs are memorably weird in the best possible way. Number 24 is That's Not My Neighbor, a deceptively simple horror game where you work as a doorman in an apartment building during a period where doppelgangers have infiltrated society. Your job is to check the credentials of each visitor and determine whether they are human or an imposter. The horror is entirely psychological, built on uncertainty and the fear of making the wrong call. The charming retro art style masks a genuinely tense experience that gets progressively more difficult as the doppelgangers become better at mimicking the real residents. And rounding out the list at number 25, Firework is a quiet and emotionally devastating horror game rooted in Chinese folklore and personal grief. You play as a rookie officer investigating a tragic fire, and the story unravels layers of trauma and cultural myth at a deliberately paced rhythm. The horror here is not about jump scares or monsters chasing you. It is about the weight of loss and the way guilt can distort memory and perception. The art direction and atmospheric sound design work together to create an experience that lingers in your mind long after the credits roll.